Okay, after a couple different failed streams, once on the account of you lovely people and once on account of my own insanity, I decided I should just quit being lazy and actually make a traditional video, actually click on some buttons, do some damn editing. You'd be surprised, I do get tired of hearing myself talk, though. Not sure if this is douchey or not, but we have a green mana thing to discuss, so I'm going to put on my hell yeah, I'm gonna put on my freaking outdoor hat. I either feel like I kind of resemble like a Pokemon trainer, which is cool, or freaking who was it was like my favorite Silent Hill game, Origins, which ironically everyone else hated. Okay, maybe it's not my favorite Silent Hill, but I still really always liked the character of Travis Grady. Do y'all think that I should get like a shitty ass North Face vest, like one of those puffy down vests, you know what I mean, and just like go find a place of existential suffering to battle through? Word. Green Mana, what do I mean when I say that? I want to finally talk about The Stranger in the Woods. I just want to take a quick moment, though, to explain to you, like, this is kind of going to be in line with a lot of the videos that I'm going to be making. I think what's coming up is going to be a period of a lot of book reviews, maybe a lot of, like, plastic crap where I can, find it. Um, because due to reasons out of my control, my ability to go hiking, to shoot guns, or to go climbing or whatever has been now severely limited. I could either be butthurt about this and try to fight the flow of the Tao, or I could just move with it. So there's that dynamic change. So I'm basically just focusing these days more on. I'm gonna be focusing on like bulking up, fixing financial situations, and probably talk about books. And I have a lot of books to talk about. This one is actually something I can talk about. Um, Stuff like the Silk Roads, I did finish it, and God, what a monster of a read, and so much information, and it's definitely a book that changes my view on the world. But it's not exactly it's not YouTube friendly. So right around the time that I was trying to keep a firm grasp on my supply of green mana, I remember I had gone through two different books by John Krakauer, one of which was Into the Wild, one of which was Into Thin Air. And I was just reading them lying in my hammock next to a fire, trying to keep them skeeters off me, hoping that something would tug on my fishing line. That's not sexual, I was fishing, fucker. And when I got finished with those, I was kind of going through a little bit of John Krakauer withdrawal, man. I quickly found that though I don't think his writing style is all that great, it's nothing to write home about. It's just for some reason something that I was able to eat up like Skittles. And obviously it helps that his that the content, it helps that his thematic content is just something that makes my eyes dilate. Mountains and the mysterious people who disappear into them. Mm-hmm. So I went back to the bookstore when I was finished with them to pick up something else. I don't really watch TV anymore, and YouTube has pretty much become almost uninhabitable with all the different stuff that they're doing. Not even gonna get into that. So I read a lot. But I found that there were no more books. I did Google books similar to Into the Wild, and I really couldn't find anything that was available. Remember, it's a kind of a small bookstore and the closest thing to a metropolitan area in the South, so it's like, you gotta luck out with what you're looking for, which was interesting because I did kind of luck out. Title was Stranger in the Woods, and I'm gonna have to admit, the style of binding, despite the fact that it comes from a different publishing company than Into the Wild, greatly resembles the books written by John Krakauer. I mean, I know that there's probably a lot of different ways that those books were bound, but the one that I am the most familiar with is the famous one that has this kind of white lettering with the white bottom, and on top is the picture of Chris McCandless, leaning up against famous bus, Fairbanks 142. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, piqued my interest, and I picked it up. The first thing I noticed when flipping it open, though, is that the print is quite large. I don't know why that bugs me. I don't know why large print in a book bugs me. I feel like if it's pamphlet sized, just make it pamphlet sized. You know what I mean? If you're artificially attempting to look like you're inflating the length of the book by making it, bold print or something like that, I don't know why, but so that turns me off. But I looked past that and I decided to give it a shot once I read the description. Many people dream of escaping modern life. Yes, yes they do. But most will never act on it. Yet in 1986, 20-year-old Christopher Knight drove into rural Maine, abandoned his car, and disappeared into the woods. He would not have a conversation with another person for the next 27 years. Drawing on extensive interviews with Knight himself, journalist Michael Finkel shows how Knight lived in a tent in a secluded encampment, developed ingenious ways to store provisions and stave off frostbite during the winters. A former alarm technician, he stealthily broke into nearby cottages for food, books, and supplies, taking only what he needed, but sowing unease in a community plagued by his mysterious burglaries. Since returning to the world, he has faced unique challenges and has compelled us to re-examine our assumptions about what makes a good life. By turns riveting and thought-provoking, The Stranger in the Wood gives us deeply moving portrait of a man determined to live his own way. So, I thought I was really doing the Chris McCandless story justice, the book Into the Wild, when I made my review of it. I mean, I even went out into the woods to talk about it, pretty deep into the woods, despite the fact that on the other bank there were still normies with boats. What are you going to do? You can't get rid of normies, right? But I also didn't really get into, I don't remember the video too well, but I don't remember how much I got into how revealing that book was for me psychologically. And it very much was. I'm kind of an aloof person. And I discovered that I find a lot of peace when I am isolated and out in the wilderness. And this has greatly informed a lot of the changes, decisions that I've made in my life, and a lot of the things that I like to do, you know, post my drinky years, past the year of 26 and whatnot. But unlike Christopher Knight and unlike Chris McCandless, I have never vanished into the woods, never to return. But I feel like that's something I might do one day. And so, of course, I'm greatly attracted to a book that talks about someone who actually has an experience with doing that. Now, contrary to what the back says, his method of survival was not ingenious. Like, it doesn't really go over a lot about that. It has more to do with the psychology of the hermit knight. A lot of it is just, other than that, is just like the cool details about, you know, what he would take while he was burglarizing, the people who came by him, the way that he made like a legend for himself in that area of Maine. You know, the way that he concealed his you know, his movements, his location. I guess it was kind of smart of him. The dude is obviously very calculating in the way that he, you know, went about hiding from society. I just kind of want to talk about my thoughts about the book. I don't want to explain, you know, the entirety of the narrative, which isn't very long. Most of it just consists of it. It's definitely padded out, which is fine. I was reading it for the, you know, the pleasure of reading it. Not necessarily to have a massive information transfer like I do with, you know, books about history, and you know, sociology and stuff like that. I really got the feeling that this dude definitely thought this was going to be his break. This was going to be his Into the Wild. That sounds strange, but they're very similar stories, but ironically having to do with very different kind of people. Whereas McCandless was I don't know. It depends on which narrative you believe. Some people just kind of peg him as just a romantic kid with, you know, wanderlust. Some people think that he was dumb in his way, that he was a fool the way that he did it. Other people think that they understand why he chose to venture out into Alaska with no fucking map, because that was the way that you increase the difficulty. You know what I mean? That's the way that he could feel that he was being at one with his, you know, the spirit of the pioneer that lived within him. But this dude, Knight, is very different. Ultimately, they kind of conclude that he possibly had personality issues. I think they said schizoid personality issue was what the prison doctor kind of, you know, diagnosed him with. And I think for a small amount of time, after a failed attempt at a relationship that, by all rights, should have been good, I thought that I might have had something similar to that. And now I just kind of realized that, I don't know, man. The diagnosis of mental illness is rampant within our society, and it is not, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think the fact that we're finding more mental sicknesses in people is indicative of our greater capacity to scientifically address, you know, the human condition. I think it has to do with the fact that our society is incompatible with humanity. Consider the fact that, like, in the 1840s, there was a woman who lived in New York City who was named Maggie Hellcat, who would wear little copper talons and sharpened her teeth with a file. And people were just like, That's Maggie. She'll screech at you and do this. Yeah, just don't worry about it. Just fucking Maggie. She's just fucking crazy. Like back in the day, they didn't give a shit. But society now is incompatible with a wide variety of people who in the past would have found themselves at home in one way or another with their community. And so you kind of see this, and he does actually kind of cover that in the earliest chapters. He even brings up hikikomori, which, if you're a fan of Welcome to the NHK, there is a chapter, actually, and there's an interesting amount of discussion about the nature of being a hermit, what drives people to do that, and how in the past it was kind of a venerated thing, and it was part of a lot of religious movements, including some weird stuff the Catholic Church used to do. He talks about what isolation does to a person psychologically, and he cites some very interesting studies. It's not the bulk of the book that's like that, but that is in there, and it was interesting. My favorite being the study of, I think there was a French one in the 1970s that they asked to live in a cave sealed off from all, human contact and from all light for, I think it was like a year, and she died like 3 years later. It's not something the brain should do, but I'm assuming there are people who are more likely to be able to withstand it than people who are not. I would suggest that I'm on the farther end of the I can stand to be alone spectrum, you know what I mean? I can do without human contact for some time, but thankfully, I don't think that makes me an unfriendly person. I love my friends and I love my family. It's just, I'm also kind of that guy who could just sort of, disappear, who would like to be able to disappear at will. Unfortunately, these days I don't think I'm going to be doing too much of that. Like I said, I really don't want to explain the entire narrative of the book. I want to encourage you to read this book. This will take you like a day. That print is old lady Bible big. You know what I mean? The chapters are like 2 pages long, 24 chapters. You can just eat the book whole, man. So I really don't have a lot of information to give to you. I feel like, really, much like Chris McCandless, you can also just kind of look this up on one of those spooky channels that YouTube used to host, but has probably, long since done away with Thanos Snap, on the grounds that it's not Disney or CNN, whatever. But I remember back in the day, man, you could watch a whole bunch of videos about, what was that, like, weird, thing that happened in Russia, the something pass where a bunch of backpackers were found, like, naked and their bodies were cooked or something like that. Weird stuff like that. Those weird dark channels that involve, human anomalies and nature and whatnot. I definitely think that you could definitely find this dude on one of those top 10 lists. He's very interesting. The motives behind his reason to leave are hotly debated, as well as Chris McCandless. He's very yin and yang, Chris McCandless, and it all kind of culminates in it's almost a better ending than Into the Wild, because with Chris McCandless, he's dead. So the ending is just his family, dealing with the loss of their loved one, and his parents visiting the bus and leaving behind rations and a note that says, "Call your parents as soon as you can," which, by the way, is beautiful. This is kind of stark and dark an ending, but there's still a little twinge of hope in it. With Chris McCandless, he's dead. This dude is still alive. You could go find him, but he'd hate you for it because he does not want to talk to you. This guy is the monkiest monk that ever monked, man. This guy, he's the shadow warrior. He lives in the. He doesn't want to. Yeah, I don't know what I meant I don't know where I was going with that. That quickly went off the rails. He is a very aloof person to an extreme, and the ending of the book actually really has like kind of the journalist pushing his luck by returning from Montana. He goes back and forth from Montana to Maine, flying out to see him in prison. And near the end of the book, when he gets out, when he gets released from prison, his community took it really easy on him, considering that he had committed, like, I think several thousand felonies, because he continued to break and enter into people's houses. And he claims that he was really sorry about that. He claims that he had a really strict, traditional upbringing. He knows that being a thief is wrong, but it was the only way to facilitate his life of extreme, extreme isolation. Back in the day, when the Buddhists in Tibet would send someone to what is known as the Dark Retreat, I'm assuming someone would drop by the cave with, food goods to kind of, help them further on their path to enlightenment, because it was venerated and because Buddhists are fucking awesome. But this was not really something that, you know, this guy had, so he had to steal. And he even talks about like the moral system that he used to steal things. Specifically, he said he did play video games. He's like, I stole Game Boys, and he's like, but if they looked new, if they looked like state of the art, I didn't want to rob some kid of his newest Christmas toy. I would only take it if it looked old. And he's like, I really liked Pokemon. One of the other things that he said, and I wish I could find the quote directly. Maybe I can. Can't find the quote directly, but he essentially talks about Ulysses. He stole a bunch of books. He mostly just sat in his tent in the middle of, you know, the wilderness in Maine, and tried to avoid freezing to death by eating a bunch of ho-hos and ding-dings and gaining weight, which is a valid strategy. You know, he was a bear. He was the human bear. And he would play Pokemon, and he would read, you know, like different books, and he was asked about, you know, which book was like his least favorite, and he said Ulysses. And the journalist was like, really? And he's like, yeah, I really kind of got the feeling that, he doesn't use this exact word, but he basically says that he thought that James Joyce was a shit poster who was just fucking with us. He said, I actually kind of thought that at a certain point that James Joyce was just having fun with it. And he said that it's just that book that intellectuals, he says pseudo-intellectual, which, by the way, I hate that term. What is a pseudo-intellectual? Please enlighten me. You know what I mean? Someone that everyone thinks is intelligent, but they really aren't. Like, so you have the monopoly on what constitutes intelligence. Um, but he says it's the book that pseudo-intellects like to, quote, throw out, like to name drop as their favorite book, and I will, quote, not be intellectually bullied into enjoying something. And I'm like, God damn, dude. But anyway, once the dude got out of, you know, the community took it easy on him. They gave him release with the promise that he wasn't going to run out into the fucking woods again, and they enforced that by making him get a job. He shows up to court every single time for his probation. They say that he's, you know, a model reformed prisoner. And he does some work with his family because his family is a very industrial one that owned like a farm when he was young and now owns some kind of manufacturing. It's like I think it's it's a garage. They own a mechanic garage for cars, and he helps work on something I forget. But that's not really the important detail. The thing is that the job that his family chose to give him was one that would allow him to kind of stay isolated. He didn't want to interact with people, and the thing is this guy. So Michael Finkel kind of just comes in and fucks up his day by visiting him without his permission. And when he finally wrangles him and gets him to talk, he kind of has this really depressing admission where he says, when I went to prison, it was my double winter. And he says, what do you mean by that? And he's like, the summer was always the height. The summer was always what I was waiting for. I never knew if I was going to survive the winter or not, because, I mean, I was in a fucking tent that I could only insulate so much. I could only wear so many layers of clothing, and I could only gain so much weight. And it's fucking Maine. So he said that when he went to prison, it was coming up on summer when he got caught, you know, when he finally got caught. And he's like, and now that they've released me, winter's coming again. So it's my double winter. And that really resonated with me, because the summer is when all of my energy comes out, when my shit is in bloom, when I can go and do the things that really make me feel fulfilled. And the winter is something that I just have to get through. I'm grateful I don't have seasonal affectiveness disorder. I mean, we all struggle with depression because we're millennials. If you're a millennial, you're just depressed. Welcome to it. But I don't take drugs to fix that. I go out into the forest. But that's the thing. It's like, so winter came around or summer came around, and with this past summer, I wasn't really able to do much. I mean, it was okay. I shouldn't complain. I got in more green mana than I could have if I hadn't. But just a couple of seasons ago, just 2 summers ago, I also had a summer where I couldn't do fucking anything. I was at a really bad situation in my work. So it's just like another double winter. But I also kind of take the whole thing as a challenge, and that kind of helps me to get through it. Like, I've decided I'm going to see how long I can wear shorts for, because supposedly, you know, keeping that whole area aerated down there is good for the testosterone levels. And I remember when I was training, when I first started getting back into my fitness routine, I was jump roping outside, and like every time that it got too cold to do it, I was like, fuck you, winter, I'll just keep jumping. And then like it started hailing, and I was just like, fuck you, winter. And so I'm looking forward to that challenge again. I'm going to start jumping rope outside again. We're going to see how long I can last with just shorts on, because I do know that I am greatly adjusted to the heat, and I'm certain that the winter is going to fuck my day up, but we're going to try, man. I had a lot more to say on this before when I was kind of going through the Bardo. I talked a lot more about it in a stream that had to get deleted, but um, having my Taoist power source removed from me, the ability to go and find my center among the rocks and the rivers and the trees and shit, it definitely fucked my day up, doing nothing but studying, cramming nonstop, and not being able to do anything besides work out, and cram. Really effed my day up, and the entire time there's just this itching in my brain that says, just run away, just carjack somebody like Grand Theft Auto and just run to the Cherokee National Forest. You know what I mean? And there are many more people who are like this. There are a lot of people in our society that are like this, and I think I had some kind of soapbox I was going to get on about the reason why there's so many people who want to just disappear. But seeing as I've had to throw out 2 videos already, maybe that's not something that we should talk about. And one of the other reasons why I don't have as much to say about it as I did before is, I went on vacation.
Yeah, take your time, by the way. We're in no rush.
Yeah, I just figured I'd get some quick footage. But this 4th generation space dildo camera can't focus. That's cool. It does say rewind. That's great. Ugh. Room alarmed. Are we allowed to go in here?
This is the...
Just
You can go
don't.
to the Gutenberg Bible.
Holy shit, is that what that is?
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy. Holy crap. How could they read it in that weird German language? National Park Service, welcome to Bunker Hill Monument. Has 294 steps. Well, I'm not a soy boy, so check that out. And that's, there's the masonry symbol right up there. That's spoopy. That's how that works. This is an exact model of the first monument erected at Bunker Hill. Tight.
I finally got to go see some old friends. Got some green mana in.
Right here.
I have perception 1, so...
I think if I poke it with a stick, it'll feel at home.
Oh, shit! That is a snake. Dude, that's funny. Don't poke him, man.
This, that's a water moccasin, I think.
Yeah, just leave the little snack alone.
Don't tread on me, snack.
Let's go back.
Did a lot of the things that remind me about why we keep going, and so I can't be as melodramatic about the book as I would have before. But don't worry, guys, I'm not sitting on my hands. I promise that one of the things that I'm not gonna do is go to my power cave and channel my spirit animal and forget all about you guys. That would definitely help, and I know that the production of videos has slipped a little bit, but haven't forgotten about you guys. I greatly thank you for all your Patreon donations. They're helping keep me afloat. I'm not spending them all on cocaine and hookers like I wish I was. There's not even enough there to buy cocaine and or hooker. It would supplement the purchase of a hooker, and I'd be down with that. But I'm gonna use it to try. I'm thinking, like, unfortunately, there's gonna be maybe a few more Let's Plays, more book reviews, some plastic crap. It's gonna be a lot of blue mana now. It's gonna be a lot of, like, talking about culture and I don't fucking know.